And, I would sit at practice and I would say we could win with all three of these guys. I really felt that, and I was not. It's really why I kind of felt easy about the decision, because I did not. It was not like, oh gosh. I mean, I felt like we could go any of the three directions. What separates Jaren is just Jaren is a little bit of an instinct. Once you get past the arm talent and all that type of thing, he's just a little bit of an instinct in terms of where to go with the ball, and a feel for the game that I think was a little bit different than the other two at this moment. And ultimately that might have been the deciding factor.
Coach, right here. Coach Eno said it, that Jaren put the exclamation point pretty much after Saturday's scrimmage.
Right.
Your thoughts on how accurate that is?
Yeah, I think Jaren. We have a decision-making grade. I think Jaren graded out at 88% on Saturday. Just in terms of going the right spot, and that's why. The way we have evaluated quarterbacks, it's not always result-based, right? Because, again, a pass can be batted down at the line or a guy could drop it. It's not always predicated off of, how did the drive end and touchdowns. And really that actually told the story for the scrimmage as a whole, because as I mentioned after the scrimmage on Saturday night, from a result standpoint, the first half was not good at all. I mean, it was, the offense was not getting in the end zone. But this is why we use data, when we went back and looked, the scrimmage was much better than the scrimmage 2 weeks ago in terms of our efficiency and in terms of our ideals of playing clean and not, making mental errors and things like that. There were there were drive killing, one guy would have a penalty or one guy would have a false start, things like that. That still has to be corrected, but when you're talking about evaluating a quarterback, that can't go against the quarterback's evaluation as long as he's doing the right thing. And Jaren by far was the best guy on Saturday with that.
Manny, did it surprise you at all? Go back to ancient history, so I apologize. But when you took the job, did it surprise you at all that Shaq is still here?
Shaq. I don't. You never know, right? So I was hopeful, but we made a really, really, really big deal last year defensively about really understanding how the NFL draft works and really trying to educate our guys more. We had been doing educational things, but trying to do it before the decision is being made in December and January, because we know that the voices from the outside are pulling in one direction, and understanding the way the money works in the draft, understand the slotting, the way everything works, and Shaq and Mike as well were really buying into what we philosophically we're saying is just don't settle, right? When great's available, don't take good, and I think that's kind of their MO, So I think they realized that where they felt like they'd be slotted, that they could do better than that. What makes them special, that story has been told before. I think what makes them special is they wanted to come back because they didn't want to walk off the field on a 7-win team. And it's very important to Shaq and Mike as well. It's very important that they want their name on the wall here. They want to leave. They're constantly being evaluated by our ex-great linebackers, and they want to be able to walk out here and say we're peers. So I think for those intrinsic reasons, that's what makes them special to UM.
11 days to be exact till that Florida game. Now making this QB decision, and especially on offense, knowing, hey, this is your guy that's going to be under center for that game. How much do you think this team is now focused and aware of how close this is and getting this thing started in a week and a half?
Well, there's two things. One, we're on. I mean, we're into Florida prep as it is right now anyway. But secondly, it's just good to have a guy. You know what I mean? And a guy, just, I felt like at times we didn't have that a year ago, where it's like, this is our guy. We're going to rally around our guy. We're going to protect our guy. Because everybody's going to talk about whether that guy can do it all. Well, I got an idea. We're going to protect him with the way we play defense. We're going to protect him with the way that we block. We're going to protect him with the way that we catch. We're going to protect him with everything, so that, we're not expecting whoever the quarterback was going to be to have to put on a cape and do it all himself. So I think the fact that the team can have a rallying point, and that we're not going to flinch on, I think is something it's been a long time coming.
Every defensive player I asked for a man said that. Then I asked what's the difference between Manny Diaz as a head coach and a defensive coordinator. I said nothing. Did you purposely go in thinking I'm going to be the same guy. I'm not going to, I don't know if act like a head coach is the right word, but you're just going to be the same guy, so you can, I don't know, helping you with this transition.
Right. All I know is how to be as myself, and I think you have to be authentic. That was even before you're a coordinator and the first time you become a coordinator, and it's only the first time you become a head coach. I think the one thing that players can always sniff out is a fake, someone that's trying to be somebody else. And I've been very fortunate to learn from a lot of great head coaches. You steal a lot of great ideas, but when same thing when you're putting together a defense, you have to be you, because they can tell when you're not being you. So I've been. I hang out with the offense more often. That part's changed. I root for those guys a lot harder now. So I rooted for them in the past too, but a lot harder now. So.
Manny, what's the situation with Tate and Nkosi? Do you expect them to be here on the team, stay on the team?
I hope so. We told them right now that we felt it was too close to call in terms of who the backup would be. So we want both those guys to be able to fight that out and find out. Because I know it's the old story, but you're a snap away, and for me the story is that 3 guys proved on our practice field that they can win, that they can lead University of Miami to wins. And where we were on January 1st, when we weren't sure there was a guy that could do that, I think that's the benefit. We've got 3 guys that feel like they can go in there and function at a high level, and now let's find out who the second guy is.
Would you like to play, the true freshmen are allowed to play, for the 4 games? Is it your philosophy, if you can, to get those guys in to get some playing experience, including the quarterbacks?
Of course, yeah. That's always a possibility. You just have to see how your season unfolds and and where the opportunities are to get some at bats.
What is that sort of a window of opportunity you get the guys to prove themselves, given the fact that you have some depth in the position at quarterback? What's the time frame you give a guy to prove himself?
In a game or whatever, or in a
Game and
no. To me, we don't even consider that. We don't even look at it that way. We picked a guy. We go with our guy. We understand that. Look, we have our entire offense is extraordinarily young. Like our seniors on offense, we have, I think, the 2 grad transfers. I think Tommy Kennedy and KJ Osborne, I think, may be our only players in their final year of eligibility. We're insanely young on offense. We have a lot of really good players, including at quarterback. So to me, this is there's a couple things going on here. There's number one, we're gearing ourselves up to compete on the 24th, but there's also a long view approach to this, right? Like we're trying to change this program, and I already can tell you, because I've been through this defensively, I could show you in 2016 how much better we played on defense in November of 2016 than we played in October of 2016. Because our players, they got it, but you get it in the games, and they really started to get it. And if you think about the West Virginia game and the bowl game that year, where we went out and really whipped a good opponent, in Orlando, we're going to make the same improvements offensively as the year goes on. I'm not worried about that in terms of the execution improving. What I am worried about right now is our effort, our competitive spirit, our fight, and our body language. Because to me, those are the controllables. Our quarterback will improve, right? Our offensive line, our wide receivers, our tight ends are going to get better as they start to understand and get into games running the style of offense. And I've just seen that everywhere I've been as a defensive coordinator as well.
Hey, Manny. I heard you on Joe Rose this morning say you're nowhere close yet to putting out a depth chart.
Right.
What positions in your mind are really still up for grabs that maybe are really hard to decide right now?
Well, let's see. I think we have a couple of spots in the secondary that we're still sorting out, and in our sub packages as well. Obviously the linebackers, we have a good idea there. Defensive line, it doesn't. We roll so many guys there. I'm not so much concerned who's in the first group. Offensive line, we've got a couple different combinations that we're still playing around with this week before we know who the first 5 to go out there will be. We've got some young guys emerging that gives us some flexibility to maybe move some guys around. So still trying to sort out what the best 5 are there. Tight end, which is the first one on the field, right, that doesn't really matter to me. You know what I mean? I know we've got some tight ends that are above the line guys that can go in there and play. Same thing at wide receiver. I'm not a, if you know us now and if you'll watch us, we'll be multiple enough on both sides where there'll be a lot of guys playing. Who's out there for the first play is not of utmost concern to me.
Manny, you said a minute ago that you've stolen ideas from head coaches you've worked with over the past. So what have you kind of stolen or learned specifically from Coach Mullen?
I think Dan and I have always seen the game through a similar lens. I think Dan has always been a little bit of an outside the box thinker in terms of his way of approaching offense. He's always tried to be very creative. He's always been very demanding of a coach, to make sure his guys perform, So, and I think that's why we've always mixed well together when we've been together. The 2 years we were together, Mississippi State won 9 games both years, which I think they've only done 6 times ever. I think 6 or 7 times in the history of the program. So we were there for 2 of their better years. So we've always got along good. We get along well personally. There were things in his program that he inherited from head coaches that he'd worked for, in terms of the ways that the off season was structured and things like that, that I've borrowed from and carried on from. So and then the idea of what we talked about earlier, just being authentic, being who you are and being yourself. I think that's something you learn from every head coach is who are you and how do you get your personality to fit the manner of your program.
He spoke about this a little bit yesterday too, in that week ones are always, there's always a guessing game going on because nobody really knows who a team is. And
Right.
At that point, the fact that he knows you and you know him, does that maybe give a little bit of hope as far as insight, as far as what one guy might be thinking and vice versa?
Or does it cancel it out, and it becomes a non-factor? I just, he's not blocking and I'm not tackling, I think openers, and this is, again, something I took from some great head coaches I work for, it's going to be conditioning. And I know how they run their program. I know that they'll be in great shape. I know our program. I know we'll be in great shape. So that, to me, that'll probably be a draw. Tackling, first opportunity to tackle for not first, but limited opportunities to tackle and to get tackled. Understanding how to to get tackled. Special teams in openers are always really, really important. And then obviously the turnovers, right? Those things that they can decide games. So, that those 4 things have kind of stood the test of time. It's the things that really, really matter, especially when teams, that have good players on both sides, come together. Yes.
I know it's still fresh, obviously, Manny, with picking Jaron, but have you and Dan talked about maybe creating a package for Tate as Ohio State did? And did you leave your conversation with Tate believing he was going to remain with you, or was that unclear based on his comments?
No, everything was clearly that he was with us, and we're going to, as we always do with any of our players, we're going to utilize the guys we have at our disposal. I think one thing that Dan Enos does a great job of is finding the things that our guys can do really well and being able to craft something to get those guys on the field, to get those guys the ball. So whether that's, you're talking about our third tight end, or you're talking about our third or second or third quarterback, or you're talking about our second or third wide receiver, to me, it's all the same. So whatever it takes to get yards and get points, we're not opposed to anything.
Is it imperative to have a backup named or known for the game one as imperative as it was to get a starter, or is that something that could go on beyond next?
No, for
next
sure,
Saturday?
because of snaps and preparation, right? Because really for next week, we'll continue to work all 3 guys, but next week you got to have the guy that knows that, like, listen, it's not complicated. Knock on wood, but things can happen, and all of a sudden, the guy's got to go in the game, and so you want that guy to be prepared.
Manny, come August 24th, what can fans and what can we see differently coming out the tunnel from the Hurricanes?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be watching for. I'm going to be watching for, will we compete? That's the biggest difference. Like I said, the execution, I'm not worried about that. That'll come. But can we compete? Can we play like Miami Hurricanes? And can we sustain that for 60 minutes? With our effort, with our attitude, with our demeanor, with our toughness, all those non-negotiables that we have to have. There's going to be adversity. I'm almost waiting on it, because I really, really want to see how we respond. Because I felt like we, in those settings, and again, I keep pointing to LSU a year ago, that in a very tight game, 3-3 right at the end of the first quarter, they pop a touchdown run, adversity struck, and we responded very poorly and played maybe the worst 20 minutes of football after that we did as the entire season. I want to see a team that if something bad happens, and spoiler alert, something bad will happen, that we can respond and get back off the mat and get right back into the game, because that's really been a big point of our offseason. And who? And when I say these things, you've got a lot of guys playing, so what we get to evaluate is, you don't say, a team didn't respond well. Against LSU last year, it's not every player didn't respond very well, but enough players responded very poorly that the team suffered. And so what you're trying to do now as a coach is, if we still have those guys, that we can sort of isolate them, point it out, and sort of show that this is what's not acceptable at Miami anymore. Over here.
Coach, a lot has been made about the first game and even your inaugural season, but I'm just curious, as important as those things are, what's been your reception in the community with alumni, with as you go shopping, as you go out to dinner with people? You know, how have they embraced you as a head football coach, and have any of those interactions stood out more than others? And what have you taken away from those interactions, and how will they lend themselves to, you know, what you do this season as the head coach?
What are these earth things you're speaking of, shopping and going out to dinner? I can't remember doing either of those things in a long, long time, unless you talk about going over to the training table for dinner. So, yeah, I do. What I will say is that you know, I do sense that the community is excited. You know, I do sense that they're excited that someone who's from here, that understands the culture of Miami football, is in charge. But all that being said, there's no hometown discounts. You know, everybody, me included, wants to see the Miami Hurricanes play well. And so we want to play as well as we can possibly play on the 24th, but we also understanding this is a game one of a new program. And so we're thinking, you know, we want to be our best on the 24th. And then after that game, we want to play our next best game against the next opponent. And we want to be a team that is constantly improving as time goes on. We'll be in a program that's constantly improving. And if you're constantly improving, it means you're never settling. So that's really been my thing. So it's been fun to, you know, again, in the, you know, you call it the honeymoon phase, you know what I mean, to go through this. But it's honestly, since we got back on July 25th when we reported, it's been all business since then.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you all.